just go back in time and fix it. Maybe you hurt a friend, maybe you just did something totally stupid and embarrassing, and you're just like, oh, I just wish I could go back and make it right. My friend walked into my dorm room and he was crying, he was in tears, he was shaking, he was just so shook up. And he came to me and you could just see on his face, some of you have heard this story before, you could see on his face just the pure expression of embarrassment and regret. He was totally in utter regret. And he opened up to me and says, John, I have messed up. I slept with my girlfriend and now she is pregnant. And he was just sobbing. And you could just tell by looking at him, he was just like, whoa, I just wish with all my heart I could turn back the clock and change it all. Run away from that sin, resist that temptation. I just wish with all my heart that I could turn back time and fix it. And as a result, as he's telling me this, and after he told me this, you could just see that his perspective of himself was, I am a person, when he looks at himself in the mirror, when he thinks about himself, he thinks of himself as someone that is permanently marked by what he has done. He thinks that when other people look at him, they don't see him, they see, oh, that's the person that fill in the blank. He feels that when God looks at him, that he feels like, oh, when God looks down at me, he sees a person that's permanently marked, a person that is messed up big time, a person that should be disregarded, a person that is unusable. He felt permanently marked. And some of you may be feeling that today. Maybe you've made a big mistake of some kind, and you feel like when people look at you, all they're thinking about is your mistake, what you've done wrong. And you feel like someone just took a huge, humongous permanent marker and just crossed you off, so when everyone looks at you, they see just a mistake. When you look at yourself and when God looks at you, they just see someone that's permanently marked, unusable, unforgiven. Just put them aside. Some of you may not have messed up big time, or you don't think you have, but for you, you view yourself as someone that is inferior. Maybe it's based on the way you look, maybe it's based on what you can or cannot do. And when you think of people looking at you, or when you look at yourself, you think of yourself as just someone that's marked as an outcast. Someone that everyone just pushes aside. And today we're going to be looking at a group of people that feel this way. They feel like they've been permanently marked. They feel like because of how all their mess up, all their mistakes, they feel like God views them and sees a group of people that are permanently marked by their mistake. They can't get better. They have no hope. They have no future with God. They are just people that are permanently marked. And they're asking the question, they want to ask God, do you really view me this way? Have you really messed up this bad? Is your grace and forgiveness powerful enough to cover this? So we're going to go ahead and turn to Romans chapter 11. Go ahead and turn to Romans chapter 11. And we're going to see if God views people as permanently marked for what they've done. Unusable, unforgiven, someone to push aside. So Romans chapter 11, and as you're turning there, in Romans chapter 11, we're going to observe three things. We're going to observe the group of people, we're going to observe what they did, and then we're going to see the answer to our question. Does God view people as permanently marked? Can you permanently mark yourself? Or does God have a plan for you? Or can you destroy that plan? We're going to answer that question. And then we're going to see how we're going to apply Romans chapter 11 to our lives. So go ahead and turn to Romans chapter 11, starting in verse 11, where we're going to see this group of people ask God, how do you view me? You still have a plan for me even though I messed up, even though I view myself as inferior. Romans chapter 11, starting in verse 11. I say then, they did not stumble so as to fall, did they? Now that's the question. And you may be like, whoa, that has nothing to do with what you're talking about. Read it again. I say then, they did not stumble so as to fall, Did they? They're asking God the question, hey, they're saying, we messed up. This is the Jews talking. Paul is speaking for the Jews. And in the previous passage, Paul is talking to the Jews and saying, God is going to discipline you for your actions. What did the Jews do? What did the Jews do that was so terrible? Well, guess what they did? You all know what they did. They put Jesus Christ on the cross. They put Jesus Christ on the cross. They took the Son of God, God's greatest gift, and put him on a cross. They mocked him. They spat at him. As he was on the cross dying, they mocked him. When he rose from the grave, conquering all of death and hell, to spread his awesome name, they still rejected him. The majority of the Jews still rejected God. And here the Jews are crying out, we haven't fallen so far, God, that you've permanently marked us. That you've marked us off your list. They're asking this question, God, are we permanently marked, or is there still hope? They're asking the same question you may be asking. I feel permanently marked. I feel like when people look at me, all they can see is what I have done wrong. They're asking that question, God, do you feel that way? Do you perceive me that way? And then they answer, and Paul answers the question for God. People look at verse 11. I say then, they did not stumble so as to fall, did they? God, how do you view them? Are they good enough? Are they permanently marked in their eyes? And he says, may it never be. He says, absolutely not. He says that is totally and utterly false. Your God does not view you when you make a mistake. He does not view you as someone that's permanently marked, that cannot be forgiven, that cannot be used. He's talking to the Jews who crucified Jesus Christ, who rejected Jesus as his Lord. And if God is saying that to them, he can say it to you. May it never be. You are not permanently marked. And then he continues. Go on and see what God does in verse 11. He says, not only are you not permanently marked, but look on, it says, but by their transgression, by the Jews' sin, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make them jealous. Now when you read this, you're like, oh, what's going on here? What's going on here is the Jews totally jacked things up. They totally sinned. They totally went against God. And God, you know what? He wasn't thwarted by their mess up. He wasn't like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? He wasn't like, oh, my plan is totally and utterly shifted. I don't know what to do. He's like, no. He takes even their failure, and works it for good. He takes their failure to believe in Jesus Christ, to put Jesus on a cross so we can die and rise again, so that you and I, so that all the world, so that all the Gentiles can believe in him. He takes the Jews' failure, their permanently marked status in their own eyes, and he is so powerful, he is so amazing, he still works it for good. But he goes a step further than that. Look at that last line there. It says, to make them jealous. Now what is God doing here? What does that mean? To make the Jews jealous. Why would that be a good thing? Let me give you an example. I need that almond joy back there. Like, shut it. Watch out for heads. She's got an arm. All right, so, what do you, okay, I need another chair. Man, I'm short on chairs. Where's another chair? All right, so here, God is making them jealous. So God is basically saying, you know what? You Jews rejected me, but I am so concerned, I so want to reach out to you that I am going to save. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to reach out and save the Gentiles so you see Jesus in their life. You see the change that has occurred in them. And you look at them, Jews, and you say, I want that. I want that. God is still, even after they've messed up, even after they've just committed the most horrific sin they can commit, God is still reaching out to them through the Gentiles. And let me show you what this word jealousy is, all right, in this passage. So the Jews are sitting right here. I need a volunteer. This would work much better with a volunteer. Oh, this is going to be so great. May, you love almond joys? All right. All right, so this is what God is doing. This is a very simple illustration of what God is doing with almond joys instead of salvation. I need to write All right, so she is going to represent the Jewish people who rejected Jesus Christ. They rejected God's greatest gift. You know what? This is a pretty amazing gift. And guess what she is going to do? She's going to be the Jewish people, and God and I are going to come over to her, and I'm going to offer her these free, amazing, just pure and utterly glorious almond joy. Smell them. But guess what she's going to do? She's going to be such a jerk. She's going to mess up so bad that she's going to reject them.
Just like John's hand.
Reject them.
No, it's all right.
You can tell it's totally sincere. So that's what the Jews do. They reject God's greatest gift. And then I need another volunteer.
Ooh, okay, good.
Nicole, come on up. Do you like almond joys?
I do. Yes.
All right, and she represents the Jews. She represents the
I
Gentiles.
see how this is going.
The Jews reject Jesus Christ. They reject the greatest gift in the world. They reject the almond joy. But then God, He's like, whoa, I still want to reach out to these people. I still love these people so much. Even though they rejected me, I want them to come back. I want them to come back to me and believe in Jesus Christ. So what does He do? He goes to the Gentiles and He starts saving them. He's like, look at the Gentiles, look at the Gentiles, look at what you're missing, Jews. So He comes over to the Gentiles and He says, enjoy.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
No, like really eat it. Like,
Oh,
no,
okay.
truly watch. Enjoy. Savor it, slobber a little. So what is happening here? What is happening here? The Jews right here. No! Pull her back! Alright, so what is happening here? She is totally jealous for a good thing. God is saying, don't ruin the illustration. So He's saying, here are the Gentiles. He's like, Jews, look at the Gentiles. Look at what And that's exactly what God wants to happen. Round of applause for the
That guy is so much better than me.
I know. I feel so bad. Okay, but anyways, you guys get the point. Alright? So God is saying, you know what? I love these people who think, yo, look up here, look up here. These people who think they're permanently marked, who think they're lower, who think they're inferior, who think they've messed up so bad. God is saying, no, I do not view you that way at all. And you know what? I want you to come back to me. I want you to turn back to me so bad that I'm going to save this entire group of people. People are going to come to know me. The Gentiles are going to come to know me. And you're going to, I hope, my hope is that you see these people enjoying Jesus Christ, and then you come back and you say, God, I accept your Son, Jesus Christ, as your Lord and Savior. That's what He's saying here in verse 11, to make them jealous. God is reaching out. He's saying, I don't view you, no matter your mistake, no matter how you view yourself, I will never view you as someone who is permanently marked. You always have a hope. You always have a plan. I always have a plan for you. You can always turn back to me and experience true victory. You never have to view yourself as permanently marked. If you are a believer in Jesus Christ, there is one way to view yourself: as permanently forgiven, as permanently experiencing grace, no matter what you do. Now, I'm not encouraging you to say, oh, great, now I can do anything. No, don't put that regret into your life. But I'm telling you, no matter if you've done it already or you do something in the future where you experience this intense guilt and regret, you are not that guilt and regret. You are not permanently marked in God's eyes. You can experience freedom from that. My friend who came to me and confessed his sin, you know what? Not one of you in this room, not one of you in this room should ever think of that friend as someone permanently marked. You should never think of him as anything less than you. You should never think of him as anything less than a child of the King, God's Son, who says, I have forgiven you. That's how awesome, that's so great, that's how amazing the grace of your God is. He's able to say to these Jews who crucified His Son, I have a hope, I have a plan, I am reaching out to you. And He's also saying to you, I am reaching out to you. You do not have to live with this view of yourself. And you know what? It gets even better. Go to the next verse. Go to verse 12. And look at Paul's reasoning here. It's just so cool. He accepts it and he believes it and he goes forward with it and he says, verse 12, now if their transgression is riches for the world, and their failure is riches for the Gentiles, how much more will their fulfillment be? He's like, whoa! God was able to take the failure of the Jews to save the world. He was able to do that. He was that in control. Just imagine when the Jews turn back to him and say, you are Lord, you are King. Just imagine how awesome that will be. That's what Paul is saying here. And the same can apply to you. The moment when you sin and you are experiencing that extreme guilt and you're looking at yourself as totally and utterly inferior, permanently marked, you can turn back to God and your fulfillment will be totally and utterly amazing. It is not an empty experience. You can turn back to God and experience Him working in your life. He hasn't marked you off of His game plan. He hasn't set you aside. He hasn't said, you know what? You're used up. You're not good enough for my plan. He has never said that. He always has a hope for you. And then keep on reading in the next verse, verse 13. But I am speaking to you who are Gentiles, inasmuch then as I am a Gentile, I am an apostle to the Gentiles, I magnify my ministry. He so believes this. He so believes that the Jews are going to see the Christians and want that. He magnifies his ministry. He does everything he can so that other people can see it. Verse 14, if somehow I might move to jealousy my fellow countrymen and save some of them. He is so in this. He so believes this is so real. Paul magnifies his ministry. He does everything he can to save the Gentiles so the Jews will look at the Gentiles and say, I want that. Today you may be feeling like you were permanently marked. I don't know what you've done. I don't know your past fully. And I don't know how you view yourself. But I'm here to tell you tonight that God does not permanently mark you like this society does. Or you do yourself. Little example. There's a player named, it was in 1959. 1959, any of you there? Alright, his name was Roy Regal. Roy Regal, it was the Rose Bowl game. He was a football player, he played in the Rose Bowl, and he is famous because he did something wrong. Alright? It was halfway through the first quarter in the Rose Bowl. Most championship game, he's in the Rose Bowl, the other team fumbles. They fumble the football, they drop the football, he grabs the football, and he starts running the wrong way. So, I mean, this is like the ultimate thing you do not do in a championship game. He runs all the way, and right before he's like, I'm going to score, another one of his teammates has to come and tackle him on the 1 yard line. And then the other team, they get the ball and they score anyway. And it's just like, whoa. And he's just like, oh, like, what did I just do? I just made this most stupid mistake in the world. And they go in, the whole team, they go in during halftime. And Roy just sitting, they said that he was just sitting like this with a towel over his head. And he was actually crying. And the coach is trying to inspire his team to come back. And then all of a sudden the coach says, the same players that played the first half are going to play the second half. That means Roy is back in. And he's just like stunned. He's like, no, this is not right. So all the team, they go out to play, and the guy, he comes up to his coach, Roy comes up to his coach, he says, I can't do this. You realize what I did? I totally embarrassed myself. I disgraced this team. I disgraced this school. I disgraced everything about this whole, like everything we've worked for. I have ruined it. And the coach said, the game is only half over. Get back in there. Get back in there. The coach hadn't given up on him, even though he made the most stupid mistake in the world. The coach was still for him. He did not view him as someone that was permanently marked, unusable, someone that wasn't of value. Your God views you the same way. If you have messed up or view yourself as someone that is inferior, unusable, an outcast, your God does not view you that way. He views you and he says, when you make a mistake, he has hope, he has a plan for you still. He hasn't pushed you aside. He hasn't benched you from the game of life. And he is ready and willing to reach out to you and say, get up and get back in there. I am still your God. I am still on your side. That's how amazing the grace of God is. There is nothing you can do that is greater, that can push it aside. God's arms are always open to you. You are never viewed as someone permanently marked. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you are viewed as someone who's experienced permanent grace that will always be a part of your life. Now I want to apply this in two ways. First, to yourself. You view yourself as someone that's permanently marked, someone that's inferior, someone that can't be used. You better change, because that's not how the God of the universe views you. He views you as a valuable opponent against Satan. Someone that he can use in a great and awesome way. And next, when you look at somebody else, and you know the things that they have done, you know the wrong that they have done, don't ever view them as someone that is permanently marked. Don't look at someone for all the wrong they have done. Mimic your God and look at others as someone that can experience grace and forgiveness, be renewed, and be used in an incredible, awesome way. Let's go ahead and pray. God, you are a great and awesome God who is consistently reaching out. The Jews rejected you. The Jews crucified your Son. And yet you still reached out. You still said, you are not permanently marked in my eyes. You have hope in me. Turn to me. And dear God, you have given us the grace, the freedom to turn back to you and never feel like, and never actually be permanently marked by our sin, our mistakes. Only permanently experiencing grace and forgiveness that is pure and utterly free. Thank you, Jesus. In Jesus' name.